I would say I don't like to call anything a failure because I feel like we have failures every day. It's just part of living is failing and you only learn by failing. I don't think failure is a bad thing necessarily. Maybe my biggest failure would be almost being too hard-headed about failure.
Main Street businesses are struggling as they face challenges nothing like we've seen before. You're listening to the Behind Main Street podcast. Let's learn from real-world Main Street entrepreneurs, pick their brains, and learn their secrets to navigate, persevere, and overcome all the modern obstacles they face every day. Get ready to peek behind the stories, the struggles, and strategies of today's Main Street entrepreneurs. Welcome to the Behind Main Street podcast. Here's your host, Chris J. Cardona.
Great day, everyone. You're listening to the Behind Main Street podcast, where we look to chronicle the stories, the struggles, and successes behind today's local Main Street entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Chris Cardona, and welcome to the Behind Main Street podcast. If this is your first time listening or an avid follower, my fellow local Main Street entrepreneurs and I want to thank you for joining us. The world as we know it is struggling, personally and professionally. Especially Main Street businesses across the world are facing challenges nothing like we've seen before. But out of this adversity is an opportunity to find gold in each and every one of us. And that's the goal that I have for this podcast, to listen and learn from real world Main Street entrepreneurs and how they navigate, persevere, and overcome all the modern obstacles they face every day. Show notes will be found at www.behindmainstreet.com. Before we get started, I would like to thank the sponsor for this episode.
Today's episode is brought to you by Thinkin' Local, a fundraising and giving-based marketing platform whose mission is to connect local Main Street businesses who care about making an impact in the local community with schools and nonprofits who believe in supporting their local businesses. Find out more by visiting local.com.
Are you all ready? Well, let's get the show started. For today's episode, I'm very, very excited to interview a good friend, Joe Alagna, who is a local insurance broker, founder of Causewell Insurance, but he got his career started in a completely different industry and has maneuvered and pivoted to a new industry. And I'm very, very eager to go in depth and learn from his journey. Welcome, Joe, to the show. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Chris, and thank you for having me.
Perfect. Well, I know you're very, very busy juggling your agency, your family, and all that stuff. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time to take this phone call today and turning off all your devices. I really, really appreciate all you taking care of that. Well, let's start.
Yeah, it's easy to get interrupted.
Yeah, I know. It's same thing here. Well, let's kick this off. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about you and your business.
Okay, well, my name is Joe Alagna. My business is Causewell Insurance Services. We're a independent brokerage providing homeowners, car, business, and life insurance. We're a relatively new brokerage, started in July of 2021. And this was, to me, I've been in a number of different industries over the years. I wanted to work close to home, and I wanted to do something where I can be involved in my community and at the same time, have a great business. So insurance and Causewell seemed like a good way to be able to accomplish those goals.
Awesome. Well, how would you say that your family and friends describe you as a person?
I think I'm an easygoing person. I'm a person who loves people. I think, truthfully, I'm motivated by love in everything I do. I enjoy being around people. I think they would say that I'm easy to get along with, that I can be friends with almost anyone, that I like meeting new people. That would probably be mostly what people would say about me, that I'm a true friend. I'm not I try to really be helpful to people wherever I can, be honest, those type of things.
Gotcha. Well, with that said, from your perspective, how would you describe yourself?
I'd say the same. It's what it's what I'm all about. I believe that life is a mirror. When we smile at people, I think we get smiles back. I would say that, most of what we experience in life is based on how we treat other people, and that it's important to put other people first. And so that's what I strive to do. Um, I'm a believer. I'm a Christian man, and it doesn't mean I'm any better than anybody. I make a lot of mistakes and do a lot of stupid things and everything like that. But I just believe very much that we're here for a reason. That our lives are more important than just money or day-to-day things or business. So everything I do, I feel like there's a bigger purpose behind it, and I guess that guides my life, and it guides me in business too.
Well, talking about that, what would you say, it leads you on to the next question. What would you say is your overall goal or mission in life outside of business or combined with business, personal, and all that stuff? What would you say would be your mission in life?
Yeah, well, I have a 4 point um, set of goals and ideals as to how I live. And the first one is to put God first, because I think if you do that, everything else, is guided by that. And then, of course, family second. I don't, how important is your family? I mean, that's what we do, everything we do for. I love my wife. I've been married for 42 years. I most recently I've been realizing that it's my job to serve her and to be good to her and to care for her. I feel like it's the reason I'm on this earth. And of course, my kids and my grandkids fall right in line there, but it starts with my wife. So family is second. Um, and then I put business third because I actually enjoy business. I love to me, the whole business game of business is a lot of fun. I've been in several different businesses in my career, so I violated one of the rules of success, and that is to have one main purpose. I've had several main purposes when it comes to business because I've been in a lot of different kinds of businesses. But I enjoy that, and I've always enjoyed the challenge of learning, and it keeps me motivated when I'm learning something new. And then fourth, community. I think that helping other people and being involved in your community is a great ideal that is easy for us to overlook. So those are my four guiding principles: putting God first, family second, business third, and your community fourth. And those are things that I think are important in that order.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, a lot of people don't even have things figured out. I think with your experience, you've been able to, come up with a plan or at least a path that you can be able to follow, right? Like a lot of us, for me personally, even at, like now, I'm still trying to figure out like the priorities of what I'm trying to do. I know what I'm passionate about, but at the same time, being able to kind of directly say like, okay, these are my four principles in life. 'Cause for me, I haven't been able to do that yet. So I think it's good that you shared that. It made me rethink like, oh, yeah, absolutely. I need to come up with at least a guideline, right, of what I want to follow, so that that can be the baseline of what I can kind of test my theories on, what I want to do in life. Do I want to get into the business? Do I want to work with this person, or do I want to engage in something else? Always testing it out of those principles that you just laid out. So, which is good. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Well, you're welcome. They're overarching principles, and remember, I'm a little older than you are, so I've had more time to kind of think about those things. So we all have a journey. We all come to our ideas at different times in our lives, and I think that my those things for me came to me, in the last like 10 or so years. Although I think they're important for everybody.
Most definitely, most definitely. Yeah, I mean, now, like you're talking about your seasonedness, right? You've been at this, not only in business but in life, for a good number of years. What gets you up in the morning? What still excites you? I know you talked about, your faith. You talk about your wife, your family. You talk about your work now, which most people kind of put their job like, oh, in a different bucket, but you've lined your career, like your current work lined up with that. What is it about it, all of that, or a specific one that kind of gets you excited in the morning?
Well, it's kind of a funny thing because I have to reprioritize almost on a daily basis. Because truthfully, I'm naturally I am motivated about my work. It's just what drives me. And when I wake up in the morning, generally speaking, the first thing I'm thinking about is, oh yeah, this is a great idea. I can do this, I can do that, and it's always about work. But then I have to step back and say, okay, I do have these guiding principles. Let's pray. Let's spend a little time in the Bible. Let's pray for my wife. And then once I reprioritize, I just find that my day goes much easier. I feel like I'm more in tune with my values. And usually I will. It doesn't take very much for me to get settled into my work day. So it's new ideas that drive me. I get excited about, increasing my business, growing my business, looking for ways to get more leads and so that kind of comes pretty natural to me. It motivates me very much. And I just like the idea of building businesses. I've been really fortunate in my life to be involved in several successful business ventures at a high level, either in management or high level marketing positions. And almost all the businesses I've been involved with have done very well. Some of them going public, one or two of them having been bought in acquisitions because they were successful. Now, I'm not taking credit for them. There was lots of people that were involved in those businesses. I was just one of them. But I do believe that I've made significant contributions in each of those companies. And so, I decided now a little bit later in life that I'd like to do my own business and try to apply the same principles that I've applied to other businesses I've been involved in to my own business. And that's actually where I'm at today. And that's what Causewell Insurance Services is all about.
Gotcha. Well, with that said, what would you say out of everything that you've gone through, like all the different businesses, successes, and all that stuff, what is one thing that you feel consistently comes out on top that you're really, really passionate about in your life?
I would say people, caring for customers. I would say that when you do good for people and you think of your product as something that is helping people, it helps you to be excited about it. I've always been involved in the marketing and the sales aspects of businesses I've been involved in, and obviously that's the lifeblood, the flow of the business, the customers and the sales. And when you put customers first, it makes everything else easy. And of course, you've got to have a product that you believe in. No product is perfect, but you've got to look at your product and find out the aspects of it that are helpful, that are important, where your strengths are, and then help people to see that. You're basically helping them to see the value in what you do. And if you can convey that value to people, then generally speaking, they'll come on board. It's not really selling. It's more like you're helping people to accomplish their goals. And your product is just sort of a vehicle in how you do that. If you can't find that good, and it is worth sometimes seeking it because it's not always on the surface. No product's perfect. We all want a beautiful car, but we know we can't afford the most expensive car. So that's not right for us. If, not every one of us is going to be driving a Ferrari. So we don't want to drive a jalopy either, right? So we usually settle into the car that's right for us. That car is a mix of the finest quality and what we can afford. And it just falls somewhere in the middle on that spectrum. There's a perfect car for us. But the car is not perfect, but it might be the perfect car for us. So, but even if you buy a new car, there's something about it you might not like. We all make some little compromises. So you don't need perfect products, but you do need to know what is perfect for your client in the space that they exist. And your product, that's just a vehicle. That's all it is.
That's definitely a great nugget there. So with that, if you say, let's say tomorrow, you win $10 million or maybe more, $100 million, what would you be spending it on? A new Ferrari,
Obviously,
maybe?
I'd be tempted, but I'm not sure. First of all, I used a car as an example, but there's other things that actually motivate me. I would probably say that I would, besides the security of my family, which would be very exciting and very positive for me, just like anybody. So I would certainly, that would be a big part of the excitement of that if that ever did happen. Uh, but I think that what I would end up doing most, besides those basic needs, the home, the car, a little bit nice, nothing crazy. I don't think I'd be going crazy or buying that Ferrari. I don't think, honestly. Uh, I would use that money to accomplish the things that I've been putting off all my life. There are ideas that I like. Mostly, they're ideas about products and things that I've always thought would be really cool, that I want to do, but I don't have time to do. There's books I want to write, that I haven't had time to write. And so, the money would actually give me the time to do those projects that are deep in my mind, that most likely I'll go to my grave. I don't know if I'll accomplish them or not. I mean, all of us have, I would hope that all of us have goals. Even when we die, there will still be something that we wanted to do that we didn't get to finish. I mean, that's just life. We're not going to get to do everything we want to do. But I would probably use that money as a cushion to allow me to be able to do those kinds of projects, the things that I've always thought, oh, that would be so cool to do, and have that cushion. I'd probably travel a little more, I suppose. I like traveling, a lot. In my old business, I traveled a lot, but it wasn't, traveling with my family. It was more like business trips. So, that part of it I'm kind of done with. But if I had $10 million or $100 million, I suppose I'd, want to travel more. I don't know. I mean, those are the big things, I guess. I wish I could say that I would want to give it all to charity. I don't know, honestly. I'm not in that position. But there are a lot of things that I get excited about that I'd love to do and love to have the time to do. That kind of money would allow me to do those things. And that would probably be the way I would spend it.
That's great. I mean, I think it's so easy for anybody to say, well, I'm going to give it, like I'm going to give half of my money to charity. It's very, very easy to say, but when it comes down to it, it's, there's a lot of people within your circle that need the help too.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea, especially as I get older. I've gone through a process where I thought, wow, I think I got less years ahead of me than I do behind me here. And you start thinking about like what's really important. And one of those things that I think is important for a guy, in my age bracket is maybe a little legacy for your family, for your kids or grandchildren. So those are things that are also interesting to think about.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of children, grandchildren, when you were a child, what was your career dream or dream job as a child?
I always thought I'd be an entrepreneur. I had a mom who affected me deeply as a child, and for whatever her reasons were, I think it was her father that motivated her this way. She used to always tell me to work for myself, be an entrepreneur. She didn't use that word, but she talked about working for yourself. And that really did stick in my head. I can remember as a child, as a young person, wanting to own a lot of real estate. And I've had some real estate investments in my life. More recently, not in California. I just have my home, so I don't look at that as an investment, although it is. But it's just my home. But I did think about entrepreneurship at a very young age, although I didn't call it that. And then as I got older, I was so fortunate to meet a gentleman by the name of John Kelfa, who is still living today, who recruited me into sales business, the cookware industry, selling cookware in China and cutlery and crystal, for companies like Cutco was in the beginning. Some people may have heard of him. But eventually he started his own distributorship and sourced his own products. And that company was a great foundation for me to sort of step out of having no guidance as a child, which I didn't. Both of my parents really were not educated. My mom was from Sicily, only went to about the third or fourth grade, believe it or not. And my dad, high school, although my dad was a World War II veteran. I've actually written a book about my dad's experience in World War II. I'm very proud of both of my parents. They were great people. But there was no foundation about education, about entrepreneurship, besides what I told you about my mom. There was, it was really up to me. And if they gave me anything, they gave me a lot of independence, and they let me sort of learn how to fend for myself. So that was, to me, a great asset that I value till this day. There was nothing formal in any sense. They just kind of let me grow up, and they were great parents. And they instilled good values, honesty, hard work. My dad and mom were both very hard workers, and they were an example for me. So those were the things I had as a foundation. But it was really, meeting Mr. Kelfa, who I still refer to as Mr. Kelfa. He was one of the best salespeople in the world, and I say that with a lot of, honestly, people don't know him, but he was one of the hardest working men I've ever met, and he was my role model for business in my early days in the work world. And because of him, and because of the example he set for me, I've been able to carry that forward into everything I've done. And even if I didn't know what I was doing, I was able to work through the problems and solve them because of the persistence and the willingness to take the time to make things happen.
Thank you for sharing that. I think, it's very, very important for us to have mentors in life. It's good that your parents gave you that, or especially your mom gave you that nudge, that entrepreneurial nudge, right? I mean, for me, not just me, but I talk to a lot of people, I think from my generation, that, we were sort of taught to like, hey, study hard so that you can find a safe and secure job. And it's sort of a commonality. And I remember my dad would always, like my dad had a very entrepreneurial bug. I mean, as a child, he was, back in the Philippines, he would be selling like, he would be do shoe shining. He would be selling like little trinkets and things like that. And it kind of inspired me to have that entrepreneurial bug, and then I did also join, back in the day, Forever Living Products, like, selling like, back then, like network marketing, like Amway and things of that nature. So I was able to kind of get inspired to do stuff like that. But a lot of my friends, back in the Philippines, we were kind of pushed into like, hey, just study, because after you graduate, you're supposedly going to get a nice job, which I think, I've seen a lot of my old friends kind of, realize that, like those days are probably behind us, that you're going to have like just a school is a guarantee for you to be able to, to find a great job, right? And for you, having that entrepreneurial spirit at a very young age, kind of not pushed to you, but kind of hinted to you by your mom. I mean, that's an amazing head start for anyone.
Speaking of parents, Chris, I want to share something with you.
For sure, please.
Last year, thinking about my father, one of the things that was cool about my dad was he was a veteran. So my dad, he grew up during the Depression. He was born in 1921, just after the last pandemic, by the way. And then by the time he was 18, he joined the Army. And it was about 3 or 4 years before World War II. So last year, since COVID happened and I had a little extra time, I didn't have to drive, to the office where I was working. I actually wrote a book about my dad, and the book is about mostly his war experience. I call it 1 in 2 million because it's based on the 2 million plus minus soldiers that fought in France from June of 1944 until they entered Germany in December of that same year. And so I use that and his war record and our life records to actually compile it into a book, 1 in 2 million. And I'll probably publish it. I mean, right now it's just self-published, but it's got a wealth of information about what those people went through in that war. And when you think about their lives and compare them to what we are living through today and what we have lived through in our lives, we're basically halfway to heaven. As bad as it might seem, that we have seen nothing compared to what, they call the greatest generation, my dad's generation. And so we should be thankful every day. I'm thankful every day that I am not in a war, that people aren't shooting bullets at me every day, and that I'm here because my dad made it through that war. But he raised us, it was me and three brothers, so there were four of us, four boys. He raised us like little privates in the army. I mean, we had to follow his orders. We might be running around like little wild Indians when my mom was home. As soon as the old man walked in the house, we were like marching to his orders. But I think that helped us to, be a little more disciplined too. And it helped us to be better men, I would say, as we grew up.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things, like I tell my kids, I have 4 kids of my own, 2 boys and 2 girls, as you know. My wife would always tell me like, oh, you probably, the way you are was probably how your grandpa was to you. Cause my parents were separated. So I grew up, but we had a great family, like a big extended family. So I grew up a lot with my grandparents, especially my grandpa. So my grandpa was a big influence in my life. He was part of that generation. And the thing of it was, he was a university president, and the way he's not a military man, but the way he ran our household was he was like an administrator. Like how he would run the school is how he would, like everything would be accounted for. Like I remember we would have, like, as kids, right? You play with your friends, you make toys, like you cut a tree branch, like you tie it together, you make like a little toy gun or whatever with rubber bands and stuff. And my grandpa would always say like, where's your project plan? I'm like, what project plan are you talking about? This is just like some twigs that I tied together. But he said, if you're going to make something, you have to do it properly. And that structure kind of, I wish that he was still alive now, with now that I have my own kids, so that he could be able to impart some of that. Cause I can only impart so much, but he had a lot of experiences that your dad gave you, the experiences that he had, the perspective that he has. And that's why for me, I think, having you and other guests on the show is to be able to get some of those perspectives, right? That I don't have, that I never got, and to get that from you. And, thank you to your dad for serving, for allowing us to exist today. And I think a lot of the younger generations, especially, I mean, we've seen it, right? Like the news, the TV, there's so much division in society today, regardless of where you are, left, right, or center, wherever you are in life, like the divisions are more pronounced, right? But what we don't realize is there's so much commonality in our ancestry that they all sacrificed something for us to be where we are today. And a lot of times we take all of those things for granted. So I think, the message that you had there was very, very powerful. And especially coming from your dad's generation, being passed on to you and your brothers. And now I'm sure you're passing the same lessons, or you're trying to do your best to pass the same lessons to your kids and your grandkids.
Yeah, that's true.
Were you like a school person? Did you like school?
I loved school. I loved the people, but I wasn't very good at it. I was a C and a B student. I was always told I was smarter than I thought I was. So, yeah, I liked school very much, but I never looked back and thought that I was that great. I appreciated it more as an adult. I went to college as an adult, not right out of high school, University of Phoenix. And I got straight A's when I was an adult, whereas when I was a kid, I think I had some wrong attitudes about school. And because of those attitudes, I didn't do quite as well as I was capable.
When you were in school, what was your favorite class?
I didn't have any favorite class. I loved science as a kid. Mm-hmm. In fact, I was pretty dedicated to science, almost to an extreme. I had a few injuries, which I'll spare the details, that had to do with doing my own science experiments when I was a child. So I loved science. I didn't like history until I was probably a junior or senior in high school. And the only thing that got me excited about it was a great teacher who also was a great mentor. So there was one teacher that I still think about today, and that I was fortunate enough to I think he's still alive now, but some years ago, I actually talked to him on the phone and thanked him because he was a pivotal turning point in my life. He gave me confidence when, honestly, as a kid, I didn't have much of that. There was a lot of reasons and issues that caused me to be less than confident, but that was pivotal. Some of the things, the way he treated me and the way he spoke to me and the respect he gave me, which I didn't see from most teachers, caused me to think differently about myself. So I liked history because he was good at teaching it. He was a good history teacher. He was my history teacher in my junior, maybe senior year. So that changed me a little bit. But otherwise, I wasn't too enthralled by any of the topics. But as an adult, that's all changed. I love learning today. I love reading today. I believe that we don't grow if we don't expose ourselves to the ideas of others. The worst experience in the world is your own self-experience. It's the most expensive. You're much more prone for success if you learn to listen to the successes and the experiences of others. Don't try to do it all yourself. It's impossible to get. I mean, there's a world of knowledge out there. I love something a gentleman recently told me about a year and a half ago. He said the libraries are filled with all the knowledge that mostly we don't know. So just think about that. Think about how much we don't know, and yet we run around thinking we know everything. It's just a shame to see people acting that way, because the truth is that we can always learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. I was having a conversation with another guest, Travis. You know him very well. We were talking about library, right? I mean, we were kind of talking about like tools you use, how do you kind of self-educate and stuff like that. And one of the things, like, we as a generation, like my generation and younger, even my kids, we don't utilize enough is the library. It's free. It's free. Like, to get a library card, it is absolutely free. You just have to show your ID and they'll give you. And now you can even rent the books from the library on your tablet or on your computer. So that's, we don't utilize the free stuff that we have luxury for now that we should.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, looking at that, that being a turning point a pivotal moment in your life, was there one particular memory in your childhood that when you look back at, you feel that it kind of led you to where you are now?
Well, the pivotal memory in my life, it wasn't as a child. It was more as, let's say, as an almost 18-year-old. I had to lie about my age to get that job. But it was my first job, and I mentioned it earlier. It was in the business of selling cookware, door to door. And the mentorship that my manager, the owner of the company that I worked for, gave me, he changed my life, because I was living in a world, in a little town called Cicero, Illinois, that I thank God every day I didn't have to raise my children there. But Cicero was sort of a little backwards, corrupt community. There was lots of crime, lots of drugs. There was just, I was living a life where I was meeting the same people who were mostly going nowhere, hanging around the same places that were leading to nowhere, with the same people who weren't really going anywhere. And I met a man who had goals and had a career and and taught me hard work and taught me how to improve myself as a person and taught me all the lessons and the hard lessons and took me under his wing. And so I worked for him for almost 11 or 12 years. And when I got that job, when I took that job, that was the pivotal change in my life that took me from a life of kind of heading nowhere, same old, run of the mill type life, to a job where, yeah, I can change. I can meet new people. I can meet girls. I met my wife through that job. I can meet new friends. I can learn from other successful people. The whole idea of networking, marketing, sales, business, that was where the fire was lit. So I was 17 years old, and that mentorship that gentleman gave me did change my life. No question about it.
Wow. And that was John Calfa, right? Is the same guy that you're talking about?
Mr. Calfa.
Yeah. So he would.
Yeah, he's still alive today.
Wow.
He's very successful. He's the guy that drives the Ferraris, even though he's pushing 80, 75, I think right
I
now.
see. I see.
He still drives Ferraris and he's owned shopping centers. I mean, he was just a guy that was super, super motivated and instilled that kind of motivation in me. Not to the same scale as him. I don't think I could ever be as intense as he was, and I'm not sure I quite want to be. But I definitely improved as a person, as a business person, because of the things I learned from him.
Absolutely. In your childhood, what would you say was your proudest moment, or what were you most proud of in your early years?
As a child, I don't know. I mean, I had a good childhood. I had great parents, great family. I was proud of my family, my brothers. I had good brothers. We had a large extended family. That was always, fun to be around. Um, I was just lucky. Let's just put it that way. People have all different journeys in life, and our childhoods are always different. We can't choose the cards we're dealt. We weren't rich by any means. We were very poor, quite frankly. We owned a home. My father owned a home. He built a home, so he had some really nice successes. He used to always tell me, build a home, plant a tree, and have children. Those are like the big things that he thought were important in life, and I think I carried that forward in my life. Um, so nothing that stands out except for I was fortunate to have a pretty decent parents and decent childhood. And you can't choose the cards you're dealt, but you can choose how you play them. And to me, that's a pivotal thing. We can't choose our circumstances always, but we can always choose our reactions to our circumstances. And that's the difference between people who succeed and people who just linger and suffer in life.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that gold nugget. Now going into your life as an entrepreneur, what does being a local Main Street entrepreneur mean to you?
Well, I would say that the ability to interface with your community is a privilege. It's a lot of fun. It brings you a lot of satisfaction. You asked me about local. I mean, I've been involved in global entrepreneurship for the last 20 years because I was in the domain name business. So I was traveling. I mean, I've been to 45 countries in my life mostly because of that business. And that was a lot of fun. And but I wasn't able to interface with the community. So I have been very happy in the last year or so that since I've started Causewell to be able to be involved in Chino Hills and in Chino and local business. I mean, I want to expand my business beyond the local community, but I love the fact that I can, go to sleep in my own bed with my wife each night, and I don't have to be out of town 2 weeks out of the month, every month. That's just, to me, it wasn't fun anymore. So being part of the community is great. To me, local community is where you can have the most impact, by the way, whether it be politics, whether it be business. If you can establish a base of good reputation, good products, good ideas, all the things that people want out of you and out of your business locally, only then can you really expand it. I remember as a kid, we used to play a game called Risk. It's still around. And the people that won in that game were the ones that just built up this huge army in their own country and then started going out and sort of expanding and conquering the other countries. That was the strategy that I remember always working. And I think it's true in business today, too. If you can succeed locally, then and only then should you start to really scale out. I read an article recently and I thought it made so much sense. And it talked about advertising and just outreach to the community and to the world. And it said, if you have a bad product, a bad service, if you're not doing well, and then you spend money advertising, all you're doing is, sending out the reputation that you have, which is bad products and bad service. So you got to get all those pieces right first. And then once you feel that's right, you've got a good base of, clients who trust you, who like you, who love you and love your products and love your service, then you start to advertise and expand and let people beyond that base know what's going on, and you have a good chance of succeeding.
Absolutely. I think, one of the key points that you brought up there was community. And I think one of the other things that I think is important from being a Main Street business, unlike a global business, is you can kind of talk, see the effect of the product or the service that you're providing. The face-to-face interaction, you get honest feedback. Because a lot of times we have a lot of keyboard warriors who like to leave bad reviews online because they don't have to deal with the person face to face. But being a local business, a Main Street business, you're able to actually capture a lot of that feedback and make the pivotal improvements that you need to be able to make your product better for them. And hopefully with that improvement, it kind of serves the better, the global scale a lot better, right?
Right.
So, when was it that you decided this round of entrepreneurship? When did you decide, like, hey, I'm gonna, from all your experience being on domain for a great number of years, what made you, or when was it that you said, like, you know what, I'm gonna start a new type of business that is unrelated to whatever I've done before?
In truth, it wasn't anything that I planned for any long period of time. It started when the domain industry was over for me. I worked for a company, for two different companies over a period of 20 years. And the one that was the last one, I worked there for 10 years. They got acquired, and my job didn't go along with it. So I was kind of left at the end of 2020 without a job. And so I sought work in the industry. The jobs that I liked weren't interested in me, and the jobs that were interested in me, I didn't like. So I prayed a lot, and I thought about my career, and I thought about what I consider the last, well, depending on how long I live or how long I want to work. I certainly feel great. I feel healthy, thank God. I feel strong. I've got a lot of energy, and I still have, lots of goals and desires. So I thought this last 10, 20 years, whatever I'm going to do is my, entree into retirement or into the next world. I thought, what am I going to do? And I happen to have a brother who has a successful agency on the East Coast that he's run for about 12 years. So I thought, with his guidance and his experience, and with my goal of working in the community locally, and with my feeling of conviction about being insured properly, about people managing their finances properly, especially at a young age, which were things that I missed out as a young person. I thought insurance would be a great vehicle so I could work. And I, trust me, I prayed about it for 3 months, even longer, and came to the decision that, yeah, this was the right thing to do. I have 10 or 15 or 20 years left in my work life, and I have the energy to do it. It felt right, and I committed to it. So, that was how I made the decision. I came to a place where I felt like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I like the idea. I've got mentorship and guidance from somebody who I know, love, trust, that I know loves and trusts me. And with all those things in place, I believe, I'm established. And my experience, by the way, in branding. In fact, I've recently taken on a colleague, and we were working together. We signed a definitive agreement to market under the Causewell brand together. Another agent who's here in town, Rob Resendez, and we're very excited. So, now there's two of us, and we are continuing to grow, and we're just super excited about it. So I came to the conclusion after much thinking, much prayer, much planning, especially for the brand. And I'm very pleased with where we ended up and where we're going to now.
So what was that, that first day, right? Like you spent all this time, praying about it, planning on it, putting together the brand, which is like, we talked about this before. Causewell is quite a remarkable name to be able to build the brand under. So, kudos and props for that. But how was that the first day? Like, okay, today I'm an insurance broker. How was that, like that the journey? How did that start? Like, how was it like?
Well, like I said, because I was guided by prayer, it wasn't hard at all. All I had to do was pick a date. And I chose to open up on Independence Day. That was July 4th,
Amazing.
2021. And I thought that's a good day because I'll always remember it, right in the middle of the pandemic, or near what we thought would be the tail end, but it was still the pandemic. And I have not for one moment regretted what I'm doing. I mean, it's not easy. We're far from true financial success. We still have a long way to go. But I was and still am prepared for that runway. I mean, I have a runway, and I anticipated that. I knew that I would be learning a new business. I knew that I would be, challenged, because no independent broker has an easy path. There's nobody backing me, paying me a salary. It's all up to me. But I also believe that that's the best direction for us to go in as as being part of the insurance industry, because we get to shop on behalf of customers. So, I mean, let's face it, competition is what causes insurance carriers to compete. If it was a monopoly, they have no incentive to compete. So by being an independent broker, I can, talk to a customer, get their information, their unique information. We have good drivers, we have bad drivers. We have expensive homes, we have inexpensive homes. We have new homes, we have old, beat up old homes. Everybody's different, and we have people with different, financial status. So all of those things kind of come into play when you're getting an insurance quote. So you need to be able to have choices for them. And that's what I have. I'm not beholden to any one single carrier. So when somebody comes to me and says, hey, Joe, I want to look at if I can save money on my insurance, I'm not just going and saying, oh, here's what you have, one of one. That's your choice. Which would you prefer? I'm saying, look, let me get your information. Look at all the information you share with me, whether you have a business, whether you're just trying to insure your home, your car, or you want to get life insurance. And I'm going to talk to, well, it's all electronic, it's all high tech, but I'm going to put that person, that, their possessions, the things they want to insure, in front of about 5, 6, 10, or 15 of them, depending on what it is that they want to get. And I'm going to say, what's your deal? And they're going to come back to me, and I'm going to sift through those, and I'm going to present the best one to that client.
Wow, amazing. What would you say, being in your line of business is a common myth that people have about, or misconception about your line of work?
I think there's a lot of misconceptions. I mean, first of all, there's a lot of people who think that the insurance industry is kind of a racket, that that they're not honest, this and that. But I also believe, I think that is a misconception. I think most agents that I've met are people who really do care about clients, who put them first. The industry imposes very strong values on agents. You don't get to become an agent unless you study. You're going through. I mean, I feel like the industry has done a pretty good job of self legislating without. I mean, there's a lot of laws about it, but you're not anybody can get into insurance. There are requirements. So it's not just a racket. I think there's something to it. And let's face it, it's the foundation of a successful society in terms of finance. I've been to countries where there are buildings that are halfway completed. Why? Because people run out of money, because something happens that's a disaster and they can't complete the buildings. America has the best insurance infrastructure in place in the world, along with probably the UK and some of the other developed countries in Europe. China, believe it or not, has a pretty good insurance infrastructure. They're a pretty big country when it comes to insurance. So insurance protects people from financial loss. Life insurance protects families from the loss of income that the death of their breadwinner would put upon them. I mean, we forget the value that insurance gives to people. And by the way, the largest part of the revenues of insurance companies is given back in the sense of they're paying claims. So insurance is a huge industry. It's easy to throw, insults at and to think, like I say, it's a racket. But the truth is that it saves people's lives. It saves them in the worst times of their life. When your home burns down, when you lose the breadwinner and you have to raise 3 or 4 kids. um, sure, easy to overlook life insurance, for example. I mean, you know, nobody forces it on you. It's not required by law. You can buy a house and not have life insurance. You can buy a car and not have life insurance. You have to have car insurance. You have to have homeowners insurance to do those things. So life insurance is one of those things that gets put off, yet it could be the most important thing you could do for your family. So what's the misconception? Yeah, people think that the insurance industry is, always not very reputable, this, that, and whatever. And sure, there's probably some companies that aren't, like every industry. But in truth, it's a really important part of society and of, a capitalistic system of government and just, what we depend on in our everyday lives to keep things going and protect us.
Absolutely. Well, if you could have just one superpower, what would it be? But before you answer that, a quick thank you and shout out to one of our episode sponsors who helped make this show possible. Thinking Local, a fundraising and giving-based marketing platform whose mission it is, like I said earlier, to connect local Main Street businesses who care about making an impact, like Joe here, in the local community, with schools and nonprofits who believe in supporting their local businesses. Find out more by visiting www.thinkandlocal.com. So, Joe, if you could have one superpower, whether it be personal or that you can use in business, what would that be?
I think it'd be teletransportation. I'd like to be able to say, okay, I want to be in Chino right now. I want to be at the Chamber of Commerce. Boom. Maybe one day we'll have it.
Yeah, or I mean, with the new metaverse that Facebook is now, right? We may not even have to leave our chairs. We could just like meta transport to somewhere, not physically, but like our minds will get.
It feels to me like we never have enough time. So the ability to get anywhere very quickly seems like a pretty cool superpower to me.
Yeah, I know. When we were driving back over the holiday break for my kids, we went to Vegas, and on the way back, when we were driving there was clear, no traffic. But on the way back, it started raining here in Chino Hills, and the traffic was really bad. And then there was a car beside us. It was a Tesla. And I was like, oh, I wish I owned that, because like he was just sitting there relaxed, probably like watching a Netflix show or reading a book or something. And he was super relaxed because he couldn't be transported, like you said, but he was at least being efficient in his time to get anywhere he wanted without having to worry about driving.
I think it'll be a really nice change when I could read a book while I'm on my way to work or while I'm on my way to a meeting or something. It'd be kind of cool to be able to read a book just like you do on the train. And I think the cars of the future will allow us to do that.
Yeah, and that's going to be here sooner than we think. What did you wish that you knew before you started in this business?
Practically speaking, I wish I had heard about the value of compounding, the magic of compounding. I wish I would have saved more money as a young man. That probably is the one thing that if I could do over, I would have done better.
Wow, that's definitely. I mean, for our listeners out there, there is you could just Google it. There's a compound calculator, and you'll find it. It's a compound calculator. You just Google, and there's like an Albert Einstein right there on the graphic. And if you punch in any number and any date wherever you are now, like or before, like 25 years old, saving like $10 compounding interest,
saving and investing.
Yeah, in investing it and put a small return, like a 5% return. You would be like index funds give at least that. You'll be way in much better place in the future.
The most important component of it is the time. So if a guy learns that when they're 25 rather than when they're 45, they will be much better off when they're 65. So the time is the only thing you can't get back. You can get money, you can get, return on investment, but getting the time, which is the most critical factor, is probably, and so that's why I say in terms of business, the one regret I have is probably I didn't save more and invest more and learn more about investing as a young person.
Absolutely. Well, what would you like to be, we talked about a lot of things that you've done. What would you like to be most remembered by? Part of your legacy?
I think just being an honest person, a person who treated his family well, a person who cared about other people. Um, I mean, I like making money, but I don't want to be remembered because I was the guy with the most money or the most toys. I think that what's most important is how we treat others and how we make other people feel. I think that if you are good at making other people feel good, then you will feel good yourself. Other people will reciprocate. And so I would say, being a kind person, the older I get, the more I realize that, we the way we treat others is super important. We should always put other people first, and we take care of ourselves. Someone somewhere, I don't know where I heard this, but they talked about heaven, and they said, in this world we care about ourselves most. When we get that picture with the family photo, the first face we look for is our own, right? In heaven, rather than only one person caring about yourself, you'll have everybody else in the world caring about you more than yourself. So how many people would you rather have care for you? One person or thousands of people? If everybody put others first, we'd live in a perfect society.
Absolutely agreed. And like we talked about divisiveness earlier, I think if we all just put a little bit more effort into doing what you just said, caring about other people and valuing other people, we would definitely be in a much, much better place, and we could achieve so much in the future. I'm interested in your answer to this next question. Being a seasoned professional, having done, juggled a lot of things in your life, both personally and in business, how do you balance life and work now?
Well, as I've gotten older, I think, you know, I've learned to put my family first. Another one of the regrets, if I have regrets, and I don't have too many regrets, by the way, but let's just say I wish I would have spent more time and invested more time in the lives of my children and in the life of my wife. I have always been naturally inclined to work. I'm a workaholic. I really am by nature. That's what it's what I think about a lot. But if I go back and think about my life, I wish I would have spent more time with my sons. I wish I would have spent more time with my wife and invested more in them and talked to them more and taught them more, and just I can promise you that is something that you can never go wrong doing.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a good life lesson for me. Still having little kids to be able to spend quality time. And I think during the COVID pandemic, it allowed us to kind of rethink and reprioritize our life. Like the world sort of, or what, if you believe in a divine existence, or whatever it is that you believe in, from as far as our listeners are concerned, like what happened in the last couple of years to sort of forced us to reprioritize our existence in the world. And we were forced, like, shut down, literally, like, spend time with your family. You can't go out, not even the grocery store. You got to be stuck in your house, like, spend time with your family. And for me, it happened at the right time. I was in between jobs, and it happened that the pandemic happened. Not to say that it brought it was bad, but at the same time, it brought a lot of goodness into the home, I would say. Other than, of course, if you were sick at home, then that wasn't good. But other than that, it was absolutely, for me, it was a critical moment in my life.
It was the event of our lifetimes, I think. I think that in our lifetimes there has been no bigger single event that has affected our lives that will go down in history.
I absolutely agree. How do you, with what you're doing right now, I'm sure improving yourself is a constant, right? And what do you do to continue to self-educate yourself?
Well, I am a reader. I do get the Wall Street Journal every day. I feel it's one of the few objective newspapers that are out there today. There's others, but to me, I feel like it's not overly right, not overly left. I think it still reports the news pretty good, and it offers opinion both right and left. So I read that. This is the first thing I do, once I get up in the morning and start getting sorted out, I breeze through the Wall Street and look for interesting articles that, I think could be useful to me or somebody I know. And it gives me a chance to be, just generally abreast of what's happening in the world around me. And then I love to read books, and I read all different kinds, mostly nonfiction, but sometimes I read fiction too. I enjoy, I like reading the books that are, the popular culture. Some of them to me are not necessarily good for our popular culture, but I still like to kind of know what they are about. And I like to know what people are interested in and what drives our society. But I read books about business. I have interests, lots of different interests. Obviously, the ability to influence people, to sell, to market, all those things, being a better speaker, being a better writer. I'm very motivated by writing. In fact, the book I mentioned about my dad is to me one of the big breakthrough accomplishments of my life because I completed it. I've been wanting to write a book about business for 10 years. And the truth was, I never felt like I had anything that I could put out that I felt was good enough. But this book, which I never planned to put out, but it looks like I may end up doing that, was really just written as a family record. So it gave me the confidence. I thought, okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just for, to put on our family bookshelf and pass down to the kids. But because I spent the time on it, it came out to what I think is pretty good. I can't say that I'd call it perfect, but I feel very happy about it, and I'm going to release it eventually as a memoir of somebody who went through the Second World War, and about his life before and about his life after. And I think that could be interesting to people. And I think eventually I may have another few books. I'm working on one about buying insurance. I have the first version of it out, and I'm pretty excited about it. But that will expand over time. And at least now I feel like I have a process that I can use to be better at this. So I like to read a lot, and I like to write. And I think that those two processes help us to organize thoughts and understand principles really well. Because if you just read, okay, you remember so much, but if you try to write and express, you have to organize those thoughts, and you have to think about them more in a more organized way. And I think those processes actually go hand in hand. In fact, one of my favorite books, it's a classic book, and it says How to Read a Book. That's the title of it. It was written, I don't know, I think it's 100 years old. The title of the book is How to Read a Book. And I've been embarrassed on an airplane reading it because it's like, I don't want anybody to see the title of this. But the truth is, it's a fantastic book, and I think it has more to do with writing than it has to do with reading. But it's a great book, and it teaches you to, think about what you're reading and think about how much you're trying to remember about what you're reading, to think about how important what you're reading is, sort of prioritizing. Because, I have long stories. I think they're a little bit more than would be good for this interview, but to me, reading is super important, and it's something that I learned only a little later in my life. Not too much later, but certainly wasn't as a kid. I was not a big reader as a kid, but in my 20s and 30s, I became a pretty voracious reader, and today I probably do it a little more than I even should.
That's always good. It's always good to kind of store information that you never know when you're able to find it useful. Like my wife always says, like, why are you always carrying a book? We're going on vacation, because I never know. Like, I store a lot of useful or sometimes useless information in my brain, and you never know what conversations you can be able to strike up, especially in business. If you have a little bit of superficial information about something, it could lead into something big as far as business, not just business, right, but in life in general. Right. So I definitely take your advice in consuming as much information as possible, but I will definitely take you up on being able to write more. That's something that I'm really bad at. I love to read. I always say, like, I'm going to write, but it's like one of those, like, I'm going to blog about it, but I never do. And when you get into that habit, I think, that's why, like, I had a counselor before. He said, like, do a diary, do a journal. And I'm bad. I never took him up on that offer. But I think, with what your advice is, being able to finish a book, collecting your thoughts and organizing. And I'm also going to check out that How to Read a Book. I'm very interested in reading that
Yeah,
actually.
it's a great. It's an old classic, and it wasn't written a few years ago. It was written probably something like 80 years ago, and I loved it, and I keep it on my bookshelf.
That's awesome. Well, what has been throughout your either now your journey or your previous career or your life, what has been you would consider your biggest failure?
I would say I don't like to call anything a failure because I feel like we have failures every day. It's just part of living is failing and you only learn by failing. I don't think failure is a bad thing necessarily. Maybe my biggest failure would be almost being too hard-headed about failure. Like if I go back to my earlier years, my most difficult times in my life have happened because I was too hard-headed, too strong-headed. I would not change direction because I thought that would be quitting. I thought that would be failing. In fact, had I quit or allowed myself to fail sooner, I'd be better off overall. I mentioned to you earlier about my brother. Now, my brother learned how to. A lot of people call it failing fast. My brother learned. He's a way better business person than I am, and I watched him fail fast. I saw him succeed in many things. He was very successful in many of his ventures, and he's done different things just like I have in his life. But in the times when he was between his successes, he would fail 2, 3, or 4 times. And then when he found something that he felt like, okay, I'm doing the right thing now, he would be very successful. So me, I would have been like, no, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to quit. And, in the meantime, find myself in financial trouble because I wasn't willing to make a change. So failing fast, allowing yourself to fail is not really a failure. It's just a learning process that every person needs to go through. And, so my biggest failures have been when I was so afraid of failing that I allowed myself to only go deeper into failure. I wouldn't quit, and I wasn't going in the right direction anyway. So I think that's, probably, a lesson about failure. It's okay to fail. Just don't sit there and not change. You've got to change quicker.
Were there any sort of resources that you used to kind of help you get through some of those struggles?
That becomes a religious discussion. It's God. I think my best times in my life have been my worst times because those were the times and the days where I realized, like, okay, I had nowhere to go. I sort of hit bottom, not because I was taking drugs or gambling or doing something where you have to go to a AAA meeting. It was more like, I just wasn't willing to change fast enough, and it got to certain points where I got myself in trouble. I've definitely had financial problems in my life from time to time, and each time it was because I was too hard-headed to just realize the reality. When people talk about positive thinking, that's a good thing, but if you are deluding yourself, that is not a good thing. And so going to those very difficult times causes you to kind of come back to prayer, to self-assess, to ask for help, to think about your direction. They force you to do those things. And let's hope that we can be a little more thoughtful, have a little more forethought, and see when we're going in that direction and do something about it before it gets bad.
Absolutely. Is there any particular entrepreneur or book or anybody that you look up to as an entrepreneur?
If you're asking one of my more favorite books, there's a book called E-Myth. Like the author's name doesn't come to me right
Michael
away,
Gerber.
but Michael Gerber, that's the guy. And E-Myth is to me, it's a definitive guide to business because what he teaches is that your goal in business should not be, just to do business. It should be to create a business that doesn't need you. And I think that's the ultimate guide to success in business is creating, sort of an institution of sorts, something that will run even if you're not there. And if you can do that, you've taken a lot of the stress out of your life, and you've created something of value that somebody else could run. So that probably is one of the definitive works. Besides all the basic stuff, yeah, I want to be a positive thinker, and I am a positive thinker. All that stuff is important. We should never discount it. Guys like I don't know. I had them on my shelf before. I don't see it now, but the people who are the motivation, the people that teach you how to think, about what you can do and motivate you. Those are all important. Again, as long as you don't let it get to a delusional point and being able to face reality.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
But I liked it. I liked it. I liked it a lot. It was a big thing to me. Creating a business that will run even if you're not there.
Yeah, I highly
That's
recommend
my
that
goal.
book as well. I mean, I read the E-Myth Revisited, where he kind of tweaked it a little bit for the. I read it. I think late 2000s. Like he already revised some of it, and you're right. Being able to create systems, right? Like the largest companies in the world were developed because of systems. McDonald's is the second largest single landholder in the world, second only to the Catholic Church, because of the systems that they were able to put together and build. So absolutely.
Right. Today, when I do anything, it goes into a manual. So I have any process, anything that I'm learning and doing goes into a manual, and that manual is a constantly updated document, and it takes extra time. But I believe that one day, over time, soon, I hope, I'll be able to replace myself, and I'll be able to have people doing what I do in a very systematic way.
Absolutely. In your opinion, what would be the most crucial personality that you feel an entrepreneur like yourself would need to have any semblance of success?
I think it just comes down to belief, confidence, believing in yourself, believing you can do it. It's true if you think it's true. It's, you can if you think you can, and you can't if you think you can't. I would just say, and if you don't think you can, change that, or don't go there. Not everybody was meant to be an entrepreneur, but that doesn't mean you can't. If you really want to, and if you believe you can, if you've built up a base of knowledge that convinces you you're capable, then you should do it. And I think most of the successful people I know, people who own businesses, and I do think that owning businesses are, that's part of the key to success today. Most of them tell me the only regret they have is they didn't start sooner.
Absolutely. Was there any particular question that you wish I had asked you that I didn't get a chance to?
No, Chris, I think you've asked a lot of good questions, and I think you do this very well, and I appreciate it. No, I think you do a very good job.
Awesome. Well, in closing, what is one piece of advice that you can share with our listeners in their journey or deciding to become an entrepreneur, or if they already are an entrepreneur, what advice can you give them to be able to kind of go through that process?
I think it depends on their place in life. If they were a young person, somebody in high school, somebody in college, just coming out into the work world, I would say find a good mentor. And I really think you need to find that person. Don't put people on a pedestal. Think for yourself, but do find somebody that knows how to do it, and be willing to spend time either working for them or working with them. Somebody you admire, somebody who you'd like to be like, somebody who is where you want to be, and then work for them, work with them, follow them, learn from them, listen to them, and do what they tell you to do. And at some point, if you really have a desire to be in your own business, you can leverage that knowledge and probably go out and do it on your own. It's a rare individual, I think, that comes out of school, high school or college, that is like ready for true entrepreneurial efforts. I mean, it's possible and people do it, but I think that having a good mentor is a super important key. I know when my sons, as they got older and got off into business, I always tried to encourage them to find the most, my one son is a realtor, and I said, hey, John, who's the most successful person in your office. It turned out to be a married couple who were just selling homes like you can't believe. I said, get to know them. If they have an open house, volunteer to do the open house. If they're doing so many listings and if they're so successful, they can't do it all themselves. Do any open house. Be the guy that will do any open house they offer you, and that they can depend on you, and just start doing it. Anyway, long story short, my son is one of the top realtors. He has been in any brokerage that he's been part of. He's been a top realtor, and he still is today. But he took that time. He invested the time necessary to find a mentor, to learn from them, to ask them questions. And I think what you do is very valuable. You're talking to other people, you're learning from other people's experience rather than having to get your own nose bloody from your own experience. Things like that are super valuable. And that would probably be the advice I'd give to any new young entrepreneur starting out today.
Well, final thing, where can our listeners learn more about you and your business?
Okay. Well, I have my own blog at Alagna.com, believe it or not. It's ALAGNA.com, but that's kind of personal stuff. My business is Causewell Insurance Services, and you can find information about Causewell at CAUSEWELL.com. So it's just like the two words, cause, like a local cause, and well, like a water well, all strung together, Causewell.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Joe, for giving me the opportunity to learn from you, interview you on the show. I definitely picked up so much information, and I'm sure our listeners are going to pick out different nuggets of information, a lot of nuggets that they can be able to apply to their daily life, not just in business, but in daily life. I'm definitely going to hit you, check out the book recommendations that you had. I'm going to research more about John Kalfa. I want to learn more about that guy. I think he's very, very interesting.
You won't find John Kalfa in a
book.
book.
Maybe.
But I will tell you this. John, the things that John did were actually documented in textbooks that were taught in college.
Oh, wow.
During the 1950s. So trust me, this stuff doesn't apply. What John did doesn't apply in today's world. But he literally was the type of salesperson who his numbers were so high above the number two guy that most people in the United States and other parts of the country that worked for where he used to work in the 50s and 60s, they thought he was lying. But I sat in the car with him. I drove to the appointments with him. I watched him knock on the doors. I watched him talk to the people. I watched him close the sales. And he never lied about his numbers. And he did not have anybody else doing it for him. It's just what people thought and what they said because they couldn't believe how he did it. He did it because he had a saying, is the price too high to pay to work each and every day? That was his mantra. And John worked 6 days a week, year in and year out for many years, and saved most of his money to the point where he was able to invest it at a young age. And, he took advantage of all that compounding and the stuff that I talked about. And he became a very wealthy man. But you won't find John. John, he's pretty much, look around. Maybe you'll find something. I'd be interested if there's anything online. If anything, I could write that.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe that's one of
great story.
That's a good book for you to, or maybe not even just a book, just it's like a blog or anything like that. But I'll definitely as we talk more offline in the future, we'll definitely ask more about him.
It'd be interesting to see if you could find that about him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Today. He lives in Florida half the year and in Chicago the other half the year.
There you go. I will definitely do that. I also want to thank our sponsor, Thinking Local. Again, if you want to find out more information, that's local.com. And especially, I want to thank the listeners and viewers for your time today. I invite you all to please connect with us, connect with me, connect with Joe. Please also do share, subscribe, leave a rating and review. I'd very much appreciate your honest feedback, which helps me continually provide impactful content that I hope you will find valuable. And remember, every day you face adversity, think of it as an opportunity to find the gold inside you. Until next time, thank you so much and have a success-filled day.
Thanks for listening to the Behind Main Street podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. Remember to visit www.behindmainstreet.com.